Hey everyone, welcome back to Grid Chat. I am your host, Marissa Tandon, and today we will be recapping Imola. Today, I also am excited because I will not be recapping it alone, as I usually do not. I have a wonderful person who has been living in my phone for months on end and has been really fun I've actually learned a lot from, so I'm excited to have her on this show. Please welcome Christina of Christina Fast Cars on the internet.
Hello, hello. Very happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Of course, thank you for joining. I honestly do mean it. When I started following you, I feel like I've learned quite a bit from the way that you break things down. And it also kind of sometimes reminds me of like the way like John and Hank Green go through fast science or those types of things. They're really quick, really digestible, really helpful with the visuals that you do. I really enjoy it.
Oh, I'm glad. That's the big goal. My big annoyance when I started watching motorsports, especially, is that everybody uses such a specific vocabulary to describe everything, and they use buzzwords that they assume everybody knows what they mean. Like, let's improve aerodynamic performance. And you're like, but that means so many things. So I'm glad the videos are helping other people, because it is just coming from a place of frustration on my part of other people explaining things.
I like that. I like that basically you were like, look, it's great that you're explaining it, but the way you're explaining it, people probably don't know what you're talking about, so it doesn't help.
Exactly, yeah. It makes a big difference how you talk about things. It doesn't even matter if you're talking about the same thing as everybody else. If you explain it better, it's better.
So true. Well, just so that everyone can get to know you in case maybe they've never seen your content, how did you get into Formula One?
It was a random twist of fate. I was on a date and we were exchanging, this thing interests me, that thing interests you. And the thing he brought up was Formula One. And after that date, I never spoke to this man again. He was very nice, but I never spoke to him again. But the internet kept saying, hey, do you want to learn more about Formula One? Would you like to listen to this podcast, watch this video, follow this person that's involved in the sport? And eventually I said yes. I'm pretty sure the first thing I watched about Formula One was a YouTube deep dive into Crashgate.
Oh my God.
Or it was one of those deep, like, scandal dives. It was okay, cool. This sport is absolutely crazy. This is fantastic. After which I just deep dived for like 2 months. It was my obsession, watching a whole bunch of races, watching all the documentaries, Drive to Survive slotted in there. So yeah, random twist of fate that it got suggested to me. Turns out I really enjoy it, and I'm still here, and I watch a lot of motorsports now, not just Formula One. It's great.
That's so funny. I wonder if this man, like who changed your entire course of your life, knows that.
Who knows? I have no clue if he's on TikTok. He's never randomly messaged me to be like, hey, so what? And he does still have my number, I assume. So, I mean, my number hasn't changed, but yeah, he's just out there living his life and I'm out here living mine. It's kind of weird to think about, but cool.
I love that. It's like a flashpoint moment. You know what I mean? Like thanks to that one date, that one guy. Do you support any specific teams or drivers?
Ooh, I bounce around a little bit. I very much, cheer for moments in drivers' careers, I feel like is kind of the best way to describe it. So for the last like 2 years, it's been, Lando, can you please get a win? Can you please get a win? And now that he's done it, I'm a little lost and aimless. Regularly cheering for Yuki to just get points. I'm like, Yuki, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Go, 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 go. And the first race I ever watched that made me cry, that was like, oh crud, I care now, was Gasly getting his first win in 2020. I say first because I'm convinced he can do it again. So I'm invested in him for sure. But yeah, I bounce around a little bit everywhere. I want everyone to have a shining moment, and I will cheer for them just on whichever weekend I feel like they just have that buzz of energy around them.
Oh, I love that. I like the idea of cheering for moments or like checkpoints that you're looking for in the sport, because one of the things that's really interested me about meeting other people that are into Formula One is how it's not the same as other sports where you are like really dedicated to one team, the ups and downs, no matter what. It really is a sport that you can, because of how it's set up, feel like, okay, this year I really care about this team. Like next year, I'm going to care so much more about Ferrari because Lewis Hamilton's moving there. Like all of those little moments. And I love this idea of like, there are specific accomplishments that you're looking for. That's fun. It's a fun way to take it on.
I like it a lot. It makes it so much more satisfying to become invested in more people. I mean, that's the other thing about Formula One is you just have such a limited cast of characters that you can genuinely know and care about all of them, not to the same extent, but you can know enough about all of them to care enough about all of them that you can bounce around like that. You ask me about any other sport, and I can't tell you the full roster of the Canucks. I cheer for them every single time they're on the ice. I can't tell you their lineup. I can tell you maybe like 5 or 6 names, but it's so different, and it's so nice to be able to participate actively in more people's careers. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's so true. I was just, as you were saying that, I was thinking about like even American football specifically. There are so many people on the team that it doesn't even matter what team you support. There's definitely no way you know every. I mean, I say that now and someone's going to be like, actually, I can name every single person on the Cleveland like roster. Absolutely not. But yeah, it's like it is such a small crew that also, even with Formula One, not only can you know everybody that's actively participating in the sport at this moment, but you can also know the reserve drivers. You can know like Formula 2, you can know who's coming up through the ranks, which is, I think, very different. Even if you are not as much of like a dedicated fan as that would require for someone, say, who's following the NBA all the way through the combine right now, because 90% of basketball fans don't care that the combine exists, or even know what it is. So I think it's interesting that you can do that with Formula One, and maybe part of where I think it's an easy sport to get into and an easy sport to really obsess over. And so like what you're talking about with your journey of hearing about Formula One randomly and then being able to learn basically every fact about Formula One possible in a couple deep dive videos, like you can really do that.
It's exceptional. It's one of the more accessible sports, and it's also one of the reasons why it's so understandable why Formula One is the gateway into motorsports. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so happy that Netflix would love to know the process behind why they picked Formula One specifically to start their driver, not even just driver, but sport docu-series journey. Because really, the reason why it was so magical, the reason why it was so accessible and did so well was because it was a small cast of characters. Like the grid is so manageable. All of the people knowing all of their names, it's very manageable. That is not the same thing in any other series of motorsports. You have people coming in and out. The grid is constantly changing race to race. Formula One, it's consistent.
Yeah.
It makes it so easy to get invested. It's fantastic.
So I would say that Drive to Survive was like the first global success that they had with their documentaries. But the one that happened right before that was actually with college sports, which was called Last Chance U. And that started in 2016. And that was actually, I don't know how popular it was globally, but it was really popular in America, because American college sports are such an institution, in such an intense and specific way. And like we're seeing the effect of that in the WNBA right now of once you get kind of the television coverage, not to go on such a tangent, but the WNBA is now getting so much more attention because of the class that's coming out of the NCAA championship for the women's basketball tournament this year. But that success has become a bigger deal because the women's championship actually started getting television coverage, and having primetime slots and getting the excitement that the same men's league was getting. So college sports are such a big deal out here that I think when they did Last Chance U, they kind of tapped into that same interest. And then I think they were looking for a way to make that a bigger success. Like, what is a sport that would work? Because American football is not a global sport. It is an American institution for sure, but it is not something that I think often stretches outside of that same demographic that they already have. So we saw them move into Drive to Survive. They did Cheer. They also have this series called Netflix Untold, which are like really specific sports documentaries about really specific moments. So they did like Johnny Manziel, which is like big college sports scandal that we had, and then they also did this one that I really love that was like a hockey story about this guy who bought a hockey team for his son, but there's like organized crime involved. There's like all of these different. So they've done so many that really like spread out. But I think they started with specific, like I would say Netflix Last Chance U was like the blueprint for Drive to Survive in a way that people don't talk about a lot.
The season full format kind of a thing.
Yeah, where it's like there's a full, you're following specific teams, you're following them in the same sport, you're following them over a season. So I think like in Last Chance U really did find sort of that format that Drive to Survive uses, but they did it. Drive to Survive brings in, so much more money, so much more flash, so much more of a global audience. And then now they're trying to replicate the success of Drive to Survive again with other sports that are not accomplishing the same amount of success.
I watched the only one of the other sports ones that I watched. I tried to watch tennis. I didn't get invested.
Mhm.
I watched the Tour de France
Mm.
Unchained.
Oh, haven't watched that one yet.
It was, I mean, I speak French, so watching it I think was enjoyable in a different way just because I wasn't concentrating on the translations. I was actually
Mm.
listening to their actual words,
Yeah.
which have so much more emotions than you would get just reading the translation. But it was really cool because they had, people who were at the front of their field, people who were in the mid and who were in the back of
Mm.
this race. And also, I don't know much about the race itself, so they did a really good job of integrating enough context and explanation that you felt like you understood each part of the race itself. That
Yeah.
was one that I binge watched that one. And I mean, it didn't get me to watch the actual race itself, but I really enjoyed the
The
series. It
series.
was very fun.
I will say I'm really excited, and I think this one that they have coming out may get to maybe not the same level of Drive to Survive, but perhaps maybe, I don't know, we'll see. They're doing an Olympics one where they'll be
Oh,
following Simone Biles, and a couple of other athletes, but Simone Biles is the one I'm excited about, obviously.
yes. I mean, if it has Simone Biles' name attached to it, it will be incredibly popular. Everybody loves her.
Yeah.
She's that athlete. Like,
Well, and also what a comeback story that they're gonna be able to cover because they're covering it. I believe they already started filming, so they're covering it from, like, when she started to retrain, deciding that she wanted to go to Paris. I think they cover a little bit about the, her twisties and recovering from that, and then, they are, I believe, going to follow her all the way to the Olympics. I could be wrong,
wow.
but that's what it sounded like from the press release, so, yeah,
Well, that's a good plan.
I'm
I
into
I
it.
keep forgetting that the Olympics are this summer.
I know.
I keep forgetting that they're there. They're in Paris, and I'm like, "Oh, well, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay." I
Sure.
need to start remembering that because I will enjoy watching that. I like watching the gymnastics. It's, so fun.
Yeah, Summer Olympics has some of my favorites. So because we've got basketball, and women's basketball is so exciting in the Olympics because they do the 3v3, which also the men's do it
Oh.
too, but I prefer the
They
men do the 3v3, but the focus for men is on the 5, the normal tournament.
Mhm.
And women's, you get to watch so many of the, like, up and coming basketball players in those 3v3 tournaments. Very exciting. And then obviously you have gymnastics, and, like, who doesn't want to watch women's gymnastics? So,
Right.
so good.
It's when I was younger, I went through this whole period of just being like, "I'm only gonna watch women's sports because," and I had a long list of still very valid reasons, most of them being like, why would I watch the men's when I can watch the women's?
Mm,
Also, the sheer annoyance of calling it the National Hockey League, but then the women's league has to be the Professional Women's League, and it just
yep.
being like, if you're gonna call it the women's league, you have to call it the men's league too. Just the sheer annoyance that, like, always would seep into my voice and just being like, "I refuse." I've gotten a little bit lighter-handed on that. I'm not as annoyed about it all the time,
Mhm.
but if I can push for any change from the inside, it's gonna be, y'all have to rename your series. Like, you
Period.
just have to. If you're calling it a women's league, you have to call it a men's league. I'm not backing down on that one. Deal with it.
Very fair. So true. Um, yeah, you know what? Actually, now that we're talking about the Olympics, I was thinking about this the other day. Do you feel like there would be a way to bring motorsports into the Olympics?
Yes.
Yeah, I wish they would.
Absolutely. Well, because we've seen something like Race of Champions have such success
Mhm.
where they just say, here are a bunch of drivers, here are a bunch of different cars and different disciplines. And similarly to how you do it in gymnastics, where you have each event that you can be a champion of, you can also be overall champion.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic format to do with cars.
Yeah.
Just have drivers, if they want to compete in individual events, let them do that. If they want to compete in an overall category, let them do that. And especially since we've seen how many temporary circuits just be thrown up in any which city, in any which venue environment that they possibly can, don't tell me it's not possible. Don't
I
tell me you
agree.
can't make it happen.
Well, also, wouldn't it be so, like, I was thinking about this because, like, the Indy 500's coming up, or in progress basically now, and you look at how many people enter the Indy 500 and don't compete in the rest of the season. And so it's like, how cool would it be to watch, like, a Lewis Hamilton competing against a Paddle Award, or competing against Joseph Newgarden in the Olympics? Like, it only happens for once every 4 years. We're just going to take the best of the best. And also you can have you can have retired drivers coming back out. You can have someone like Sebastian Vettel, who was back on everyone's timeline this weekend, competing in a single adventure. You can give Max Verstappen something like exciting to look forward to and have a different level of competition. I want it. I want it now.
Well, plus them actually competing for their nations instead of just, oh, yes, like we're technically competing for our nation, but the only way you can tell that is right at the end when specific national anthem is played. It's like, no,
Yeah.
no, you see them in their national team kits this time. I think that would be incredibly satisfying to see.
This is our campaign 4 years from now. I do think it has to be in the summer. I don't think you could do it in the Winter Olympics.
Definitely has to be summer. Like I'm sorry, but no, it wouldn't be in the winter. The Winter Olympics are just any summer sport, but strap a blade on and see how it goes.
Yeah.
I don't think the cars can deal with that.
I mean, I'm interested in that, like put all of the Formula 1 drivers on a snowmobile. I'm intrigued. I'm available to watch it, but yeah, I think it would be something that also would bring, I'm sure, a lot of chaos in terms of planning, but also how are the Olympics not ever chaos in terms of planning? So whoever's listening, whoever's hosting next, that also some of these countries that host have circuits that they could be competing on. Anyway,
exactly.
I would love to see it. We are available to plan Olympic committee. Just let us know. Well, speaking of legendary drivers, I do want to highlight the fact that this was the 30th anniversary of Senna's crash. And I thought it was really beautiful to see the whole grid come together to really celebrate and thank him and talk about, the crash and what it has done for modern Formula One, for the safety of modern Formula One, and to see Sebastian Vettel do what he always seems to be able to do ever since he's retired, which is like bring everybody out and get everyone to do one thing. I really found it quite touching. But yeah, I wanted to mention it.
It was lovely to see. It's always nice to be reminded that this really is just a massive community of people. I know we all, look back and see how they all grew up together, but this is a moment where it really encapsulates that and you actually feel like, right, all of these people understand each other in a very specific way, understand the risk that each and every one of them takes when they go on track. It's a very heavy moment to just see, right, you guys are acknowledging this really big moment for you all that really only you are going to understand because you've been in this community, in this world for your entire lives.
Yeah.
That really hits me every single time we see a moment like this.
It's also, this one really reminded me watching it that there are some drivers on the grid that remember the crash and some drivers on the grid that were not born yet. And it stretches, again, it's one of those unique parts of this sport. And this is true for other motorsports as well, not just Formula One, but that the age gap can be so large. And so you can have people who grew up watching Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, like, be on the grid with their heroes, but you have the flip side of Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso remembering that crash and having that be a formative moment for them versus it being history for someone like Lando Norris or George Russell.
Definitely. It's so many of these moments of history feel like they're really far away, but then you realize, nope, they're actually still relatively recent. And I mean, motorsport history really only does stretch back about 100 years. So it's all relative, so to speak. But I feel like everything also just feels so condensed now that we have the internet. It just makes time feel different.
Well, it is one of those things when you look at the spread of time, it does advance so much faster, like you're saying, with the internet and with like technology, because I think when you think about the fact that, like, I'm gonna date probably both of us, but like Netflix didn't always have streaming, you know what I mean? Like, it used to be a DVD thing, and that doesn't make you old to remember that. It's like a pretty small spread of time in between when they stopped doing DVDs, and like now you talk to kids now and they're like, what is a DVD? Like, do you mean Blu-ray? Like, it's not even that. It's like, yeah, they used to have DVDs, I promise.
Oh my gosh. I still remember my mom signing us up for Netflix and sending me the login information.
Yeah.
Which I still use to this day because
I mean, as you should.
But I'm an adult and I pay for Disney Plus.
Well, there you go.
I let my mother mooch off of me for that. So
I think it's fine.
I'm an adult. My mother and I share mooching every once in a while. It's fantastic.
It's technically still the same household, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's fine.
Just because the household has two homes doesn't make it. Some other quick things that happened before the race started. We had Alex resign with Williams, which I saw quite a few people surprised by, but for me, I was like, it makes sense.
It
Um,
does.
I think honestly, it's a good sign for the future of Williams in terms of like where their 2026 car may be and moving forward. I think, especially because I usually do not deal with like the rumors until they're true. However, I did see photographic evidence of Bottas leaving the Williams motorhome.
He was just looking for coffee. He
You're
was
so
out
right.
and needed coffee. I mean, what a reasonable way to go and find himself coffee, but to go into this other motorhome.
He was so thirsty.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he thirsty.
Do you know what though? I'm going to tell you something. I'm thirsty for that. I have been Logan's number one defender, but the first person that has come up that has made me go, you know what, maybe would be Valtteri moving to Williams, because
Mhm.
Valtteri with James and with Alex, I want to see what that looks like.
I think that could be really good. I started theorizing about this a few weeks ago, and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that's a great idea. Is that Williams needs to pull a Haas, and instead
Mm,
of having two young drivers, they need to go and just get two people with experience who know how to develop a car and know how to not crash.
yeah.
Essentially, just keep it on the road. They have that with Albon. He has what, 5+ years now in Formula One.
Mhm.
Fantastic. And as much as Sargent might improve, I just don't think, even with improved performance, he can give Williams what they actually need, which is someone to help them develop a team.
Yeah.
That's not the point in his career that he's at. He is not the most useful person that they could have. And Bottas, any of the Alpine guys, I feel like that's the prime list.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for Logan moving to Williams when he did was like maybe a year too early. He should have spent one more year pre Formula 1. And also, unfortunately, being with a team that needs as much development as it needs, there's not space for him to develop as a driver. And if he were on a different team that, had a little bit more understanding of their own car, or a little bit more money, or a little less kind of turmoil in what they're doing, it could have been a situation where he was developed into a really good driver. And I'm not saying that Logan is like the greatest. He had this chance to be a world champion. I am saying that, like, I think if he had been with a team that's only focus was getting their drivers moving forward, he would have improved in a better capacity. But it's hard to improve when you're also like, if you crash the car, we have no other car. So you're going to have to consistently be good.
Absolutely. He's a victim of poor timing at the end of the day. He
Yeah.
got promoted too soon. He got promoted at a time where, like you said, the team just wasn't prepared to develop a junior. And also his hiring was a last resort for Williams. They
Mhm.
had nobody else really that they could hire at that moment in time, which is it's just so unfortunate for him because being in Formula 1, it's very frequently for most drivers a once in a lifetime opportunity, which means he's never going to get to be the fully fledged driver that he could have been. And I do believe he probably could have been a very solid driver. He could have had a very good consistent career like a number of the midfield drivers have had.
Yeah.
But he's most likely going to be off the grid this year. And hey, if he goes to IndyCar, every success to him there. I love those stories of it didn't work out in
Mhm.
Formula 1 and they get to go somewhere else. But for now, it's going to be a frustrating rest of the year, I think, because it feels like one of those inevitable sadnesses that you're just like, what could have been? It could
Yeah.
have been a much nicer story for you throughout your 2 years in Formula 1.
I agree. I would have liked to have seen what could have been, if that makes sense. But I also wonder if a move to IndyCar might be what could have been, if that makes sense. Like, he may
Mm.
be able to have a really fulfilling and progressive career where he can move forward and there is space to focus on him. There is, there's development, there's intentional focus in that. He's an American driver on an American market. I think there may be space for him there.
There's always space in IndyCar. They
So
welcome
true.
additional cars, additional teams with open arms.
Oh my gosh, is that a pointed statement about Formula 1?
No shade, no shade, no pink lemonade, but
No idea what you could be talking about there. And also, okay, so then two other big things kind of going in. We had this like weirdly low performance from Max in free practice and quite a bit of complaining from Max in free practice, which is interesting because a lot of times when this is just like a personal thing, when you listen to the drivers complaining in the ways that they complain over the radio, I'm like, okay, it can't be that dramatic. But then you watch kind of the changes that needed to be made for Max, and I do think perhaps it was that dramatic when you when you look at the performance.
he especially, I feel like it's very telling when he's unhappy.
Mm,
He is a perfectionist, so to a large extent, you're like, okay, want to be world champion, and how you get there is by being a perfectionist. Fair enough. You have to push in this way to make sure everybody takes every single little thing seriously. But he also is just such a straight shooter.
Mm.
He tells it how it is. So when he is being unhappy, over dramatic, or what some people consider to be over dramatic, I feel like I take it more at face value because I'm like, you are not somebody who's incredibly theatrical. You just say it how it is. And if you think it's this bad, then okay, it is this bad.
That's actually a very fair point because I think when you compare Max's complaints to performance overall, if he's complaining, both of the Red Bulls usually are not performing in the way that they would like to perform. If he's not complaining, we generally see a better performance from Max than we do from Checo. And I think it's interesting because it's like, I wonder how much, and again, I don't know that we'll ever find out this unless one of us becomes very good friends with Red Bull, but I do wonder how much of their sort of car development comes from that. From Max just being able to say, look, like it's not turning, it's not keeping grip. I can't turn in this position. They are one of the teams that seem to take complaints from free practice 1 and actually fix them by the time it gets to qualifying.
The thing with Max is he's been in that team for so long
Mhm.
that I think that the team just has a trust in him that is at a different level than any other driver that's going to be in that position. Like
Yeah.
they're two plants that have grown and morphed and like warped around each other kind of a thing. So, they say that the car isn't designed around Max, but he's been the driver that's been consistently giving them feedback for close to 10 years. It's inevitable. I think
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's just like, no, he's earned the trust that if he says that something is wrong, if he says that you need to fix things, you just do it because he has that proven track record within that team.
Very true. Yeah, and also having come up through Toro Rosso at the time and, no longer V-Carb. It's gone through 3 names since I think Max left, um, but yeah, I think it's one of those situations where, like, he knows the car, he knows what he's talking about. He, I guess maybe could be a little, more flowery in his language perhaps, but, maybe it seems to work for them, so I like how I said that. It seems to work for them very casually. Sometimes it works, and
It's simply
they.
lovely.
And then alternatively, we also had these McLaren upgrades, which were so important because I found it really fascinating to listen to the engineers talk about it after Miami, which was that the changes that they've made, they were honestly not expecting them to perform in the way that they did at Miami. And so moving into Imola, they were like, okay, this is actually what we built these upgrades for: fast speed corners. And also, Oscar only had half of them at Miami, and he had the full package this weekend. So moving into it, I was quite excited to see where we were at.
My anticipation was high when it came to McLaren, still, living off of the joy of seeing Lando's first win. And then to hear them say, oh, well, there's more, it's coming. And you're kind of like, okay, please tell me this isn't you guys just being like, oh, we hope. But no, it was genuine. It was fantastic to see. Disappointing that Oscar got that grid penalty, but it's fantastic to see that that car genuinely has pace.
Yeah.
It's not just okay under those specific circumstances in Miami they had that best day. No, they genuinely have the car, the driver pairing, and the team dynamics behind them to succeed.
Yeah, for me, I was like, the entire race, I was like, I wish Oscar didn't have that grid penalty. Because when you look at qualifying, Max has come out and said that he had a tow for his P1 and he wouldn't have gotten pole position if it weren't for that tow. Which is a wild thing to be able to say. They qualified within like Oscar was only 700ths of a second from Max, and Lando I believe was 900ths of a second from Max. So without that tow, we could have seen a 1-2 McLaren and a 3 Max probably. Which is just this race for me was so much of like what could have been when it comes to Oscar in particular.
Especially because we've started to see the teams do more and more strategizing when their two drivers are next to each other when they can. Like the teams that can do it well. And I think this would have been one of those days where they say, you know what? We can use both of our cars to get the optimal result between the two of us. Fantastic. Because one of my big what ifs is that Norris had to pit so early and he just ended up in traffic a lot of the time.
Yeah.
What could have been if they had pitted whichever car was behind first to call out the big game of chicken and then have that front car run for longer in clean air, catch up to Max, kind of a vibe. Like that kind of flexibility with the strategy that you get when your two cars are right next to each other.
Agreed. Yeah, the early pit stop was the thing that I was like, I think there are two places where it felt like they lost the win for Lando, and one of them was
Mhm.
that early pit stop because you really saw him losing pace throughout with his tires, where there were just that whole middle chunk where he's like, guys, like I'm losing pace, I'm losing pace. Why am I going slower than the cars behind me? Um, and then obviously in the end, he just did not have the pace to catch it up.
The sheer frustration at him getting stuck behind Checo. Not just him. There were those like two or three drivers that when they exited the pit lane, you're like, are you gonna be in the clear? No.
No.
No, you're gonna be behind Checo. Dang it. Like a
Yeah.
millisecond earlier type of a thing. And you would have been fine. You would have been in the clear, but no.
Yeah. But I'll say, you know what though? I think as frustrating as it was, I'm like, this is the racing that people have been asking
Mhm.
for. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for Max to actually really have to put in work at the end of this race to be able to, have someone in his mirrors is exciting.
It was very exciting, especially because at Imola, you have all of those hills that they're going up and over.
Yes.
And just the dramatic shots of Max and then the ominous presence of the papaya just up behind being like, I'm here.
Truly,
Fantastic.
I was like waiting for someone, and maybe, it's been a short period of time since the race has ended. So this is perhaps a little suggestion to someone who spends more time editing than me. I want like the Animal Planet edit of someone being like the papayas hunting through hunting his prey through
Oh
each
my
turn.
goodness, yes.
I'm
That
looking
would be
for it.
majestic.
The other thing that we did have as well, which was a real moment throughout the race that like I think overall it was kind of like this was a pretty boring race until the end. But when you look at qualifying and you look at like a couple of different things that happened, Fernando crashing out in FP3 and also being out in Q3, there was so much like gravel trap hitting, so much completely off the track. Max even had a black and white flag for track limits. Something about this track, everyone seemed to be struggling to stay on the track itself.
It's a skinny one. It is so, so narrow. I mean, it was designed for the cars of yesteryears, the skinny
Yeah.
ones, the short ones, the light, teeny tiny ones. It still has sausage curbs for crying out loud. It's just an old school track, which I love them to a large extent, but it's also one of those situations where you're just like, these cars and these tracks do not match up with each other anymore, and one
Mhm.
of us can change easily, the other cannot.
Yeah.
Um, please, please. But yes, I gravel traps stress me out so much. I understand they're a necessary safety feature, but oh my goodness, they give it they raise my heart rate. I'm just like, are you gonna go in? Are you not? Are you gonna go? Are you not? You see the giant cloud of smoke just puff up, the car disappears into it, and you're like, are you gonna emerge? Or are we getting a safety car? Like, ah.
Yeah, I also watching this race and watching so much of the like off track unintentional action. I will preface this and be like, stop trying to make Chicago happen. It's not happening in 2026. But all of that being said, when the conversation was happening, I don't even know what publication put that rumor out that they had confirmed that it was coming for 2026.
Not a real publication, a blog, but yes.
Literally. Well, yeah, that's the and that's what I meant earlier when I was saying like I try not to bring in the rumors until they've been at least
Yes.
rumorified by a real source. like but like the Adrian Newey and the Lewis Hamilton news is like a really good example where it was properly a rumor and then everyone was like there's no way, but then the rumor was rumored confirmed by Sky Sports. And then I was like, okay, well, then now we can talk about the rumor. But with this one, when I was watching it, I was like, okay, I do understand why people started to say, like, if a track was going to be dropped for Chicago to happen, Imola was on the list. And I thought when they were talking about it before, I was like, it's such a historic track. It would cause such an uproar to get rid of it. But then watching the race today, I was like, is it maybe not the right fit for a modern Formula One car?
Mhm.
I don't know.
No, it's very true. So many of these tracks were designed with specific eras of cars in mind, and they've become a different thing. And unfortunately, Formula One has chosen to go with the bigger, bulkier cars, and that does limit the amount of good racing that you're going to get on particular tracks. There's a reason why
Yeah.
we have purpose-built tracks. They are purpose-built, but unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's for one specific type of car. And the most successful tracks that you see that are going to have such longevity is that when they were designed, there were multiple vehicles that they were thinking of, not just, oh, this is going to be a test track for formula cars.
Yeah.
That's why I think a lot of the tracks in the States have had such longevity and such good success is they're designed just for a multitude of series. But motorsport.com actually had a great article about just how they're choosing which tracks we stay at and which ones we don't go to. And
Mm.
so much of it does come down not just to on track, but they're also trying to push them to update their trackside amenities, transport
Mm.
to and from tracks, making sure that people have shade, water, all of the stuff that you need to enjoy a race weekend that isn't just the racing on track. And I do really appreciate that Formula One is pushing for tracks to do those improvements, because some experience that I've had and heard from other people, it's like, yeah, I get it. I get why some of these tracks might be dropped because, excuse me, improve yourself, please.
Water specifically is such a good example. And also, I wonder, I mean, obviously, not even a wonder based on what you're saying. Like, Coda's putting in shades this year.
After 10
For,
years of being a
yeah,
host.
yeah, which seems like having been GA at Coda last year, like something that we should have been talking about a long time ago, I will say.
Yeah. No,
It's too
people
hot.
people get shocked when I say that Miami is my favorite trackside experience, but I'm like, go do the two different things. Like, experience the different American races, and you might understand why I say I prefer Miami. If I have to choose between going to Miami and going to Coda, I'm choosing to go to Miami.
Okay, well, I'll bring us back from our tangent into the race itself.
Bringing it
um,
back.
to go back to Williams, I feel like every week I'm devastated for them in a new way.
Gosh. I feel like I need a sadness bingo just for Williams of what now?
Yeah,
What now? Where's my break in the clouds? I just need one good day for y'all. I feel like you guys need one good day as well, quite
I agree.
frankly.
Quite frankly, I just feel like you need it more than I do, and I think we should just give it to you. And it's interesting actually because I will say like Alpine is struggling in such a strong way as well, but I feel like we just don't even really see it. It just happens and you move on. Versus Williams seems to be having these things that happen to them. Obviously they're at fault to some degree, but like these things that happen to Williams feel like the type of things that you see in a movie about a team that is just like going to eventually become the underdog that wins, you know? Like what do you mean his tire isn't on the like when that radio message came over and he was like, "I don't think the tire's on." I literally said like, "I beg your finest pardon. What do you mean?"
Like, what do you mean? Like, how is it not on? And anytime they say a tire's not on, you're just like, oh, it's just gonna fly off, isn't it? It's just gonna and go off into the distance. We're gonna see just like vroom, ba-doom, ba-doom. And thankfully that didn't happen. Like, he was able to make it
Yeah.
back to the pits, which I was kind of shocked by. I was like, wait, what's holding it on then?
Yeah.
But oh goodness, yes. They have mistakes that just make for good television. And it's unfortunate because it means people are paying more attention to them. Like,
Yeah.
poor them, they got the accident that damaged their chassis. That meant that people were paying attention and being like, "Oh my gosh, you only have 2 chassis, you don't have a spare?" And you had people being like, "Excuse me, like other teams don't
Only
have
had
a
one.
spare either, but
Yeah.
only Williams gets cooked for it
Yeah.
just by sheer dumb luck." And it was their senior driver that crashed too. You're just like, "Wow, you guys are just having a bad time of it. Jeez."
I will say, I think what Williams has is they kind of give me like they're like the parks and recreation of Formula One. You know what I
Oh my
mean? Like you
goodness.
want it to work out so badly, and they're just underfunded with like a heart of gold. They're doing their best.
They're trying. They're trying so hard. And I appreciate that they're trying. And I wish that the cost cap was better written so that would be easier for them to catch up on their infrastructure.
Yeah.
Like, those regulations should be better written so it's easier for a team like them with obvious problems to fix themselves. But hey, it's not. We just get to watch them struggle for a little bit longer. but I just need them to have one good day.
Same.
I need them to get a point, for crying
Yeah.
out loud.
Yep. I also will say though, one of the reasons why I think they make for such good TV, and also maybe one of the reasons why I'm like, I would like to see Valtteri in there to help them actually kind of develop the car and have a senior driver and have someone who Alex is very experienced, but Valtteri is experienced on an entirely different level when it comes to Formula One overall and what he'd be able to bring to the team. But the reason I was like, it broke my heart to see the radio that was released after the race of Alex trying to feed information to Logan to try to
Oh my
help.
gosh, yes.
I was like, I just want everybody on this team to be happy. Like,
Oh my gosh. It's like the girl in Mean Girls just standing over the pit being like, I miss when we were in middle school and everybody got along and had a good time. It's like, I miss when Williams were competing up at the front. I miss when they were getting podiums and wins. I miss that old livery. Ah.
It's also, like the thing about Williams is that even knowing that Logan probably won't have a seat next year with them, the thing that they have culturally as a team is this genuine support and loyalty, I think, to moving forward as much as possible together. And like it shows because it was a family owned team for so long, until Claire ultimately had to sell the team. And I think that family business element of it is still there in the culture of the team. Like you can't get rid of it. And Claire Williams actually posted a picture showing in Miami that they still have her dad's cans on the pit wall, in the garage.
Oh.
And I found it so touching, but also I was like, you know what? This is why I love this team. Like, even though they're barely competing for points at this point, like I do wish them the best in this genuine way. And it just sort of seems like they care. Like for Alex to not be focused on, okay, my race is now ruined because somebody couldn't put the tire on correctly. His response instead is like, let me race as long as I can to give data to the pit wall to give that to Logan and see if we can push Logan further up the field. And also, like, you see off track behavior. Like in Miami, they were selling Alex's clothing collection at the Williams fan zone, which they didn't have to do. They could have just kept their own Williams stuff as Alex is getting his own profit. And I think they just have this element of a family owned business that wants their team to succeed in a really genuine way. And I hope to see them be able to continue to keep that. And I do wonder sometimes, like, is like having a heart of gold part of the reason why they can't get further up the field? If they were a little bit more cutthroat, could they have, would they have left Logan behind last year and just only given him the 1 year? Would they have replaced Logan already? Maybe, but like it also is the type of team where I'm like, yeah, I would want to work there. Like if I were a driver right now, knowing I'm going to be on the back half of the field, would you rather be at Alpine or would you rather be at Williams?
Even continuing the comparison between Williams and Alpine, Williams, it feels like they have a plan,
Mm.
especially because James Vowles is continuously in front of a camera saying, this is what the plan is. We
Yeah.
are going to have a couple of tough years because we are actively fixing things, but we know how to fix things. They have a front man that you very easily can have faith in. I believe James Vowles when he says that they're trying, that they're working on things, that they're being critical of their own performances, that they're identifying problems and working towards fixing them. And it might just be a PR thing. It might just be him going to the front and being like, you know what? I'm going to hoodwink all of these people. I'm going to make them believe we're going to sell so many jerseys. Fantastic. I don't really care. I
Yeah.
follow sports for the storyline, and this is the storyline they want to feed me. Fantastic. But then you look somewhere like Alpine and you're like, I can't tell you who works there.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot tell you who works there. I can tell you the two drivers that are there. I can tell you they're not happy. I cannot tell you anything else. And that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. Like it is very much, and especially Formula One, it is about the story that you're telling. And Williams has such a good focus on that. You have the podcast that Alex and Logan do together. You have the ability to watch these drivers not just do like, they're right after the race where they're walking and, talking into the little microphone, like, we didn't get what we wanted this weekend in like the 30-second clip. You actually have like every race week Alex and Logan sitting, making jokes, laughing together. You have Leah Block being given focus, being like developed as their F1 Academy driver, and also being given airtime, doing interviews, coming on Logan and Alex's podcast. You have James Vowles doing videos every single week saying like, here's what we missed. Like, yes, I'm in my little car back to the hotel, and here's what we went wrong. Here's what we're gonna fix. Here's what a bummer it is that we don't have this spare chassis, for example. And I think it's almost it is really good PR, but it's also like the type of thing that makes people want to work with you and want to sponsor you and want to try to get you out of that bottomless pit it feels like they're in financially. Versus the thing that shocks me about Alpine not having a focus is it felt like they almost would. We had like this storyline of the two drivers that genuinely seemed to hate each other, that had to be kind of refocused into, their childhood drama of like their competitiveness. You have massive celebrities that have now invested in Alpine through an investor group. Because you have Ryan Reynolds, you have Rob McElhenney, you have the other celebrity friends that they brought, you have some football players. Like, there's quite a few people that have invested in Alpine that bring star power that are not ever like, they're not even really being shown in the garage. They're not being involved. I haven't seen them tweet one time to be like, by the way, our car's sucking lately, but you should still watch. Like, it's interesting to me.
The only thing we're getting is Jack Doohan shoved in the middle of the two senior drivers being like, hey, here's your buffer, play nice with each other. Jack Doohan, the absolute hero that you are being. I hope they're paying you extra for that. Because, like, he's good at it, which is great. He will one day, post-driving, whatever he does as far as on-track career, he is going to have a good career as far as a commentator, presenter, whatever it is. Like, he's got good experience. He's quite competent at it. Fantastic to see, but oh my goodness. Just watching him in Australia being like, yeah, this is my home race, and I'm here cooking burgers with these two.
Love these guys.
It's just like, oh, Jack Doohan. Like, out of all three of them, the fact that he's the one I'm most excited to see when their content comes out, it's not great. And it's not unfortunate because Esteban and Pierre both have their own specific type of humor. They both have their specific narratives, and I get it. They don't buzz, sizzle, and sparkle when you put them on camera together. That's fine, but I feel like we should be still getting those nice social media moments just with them individually. I feel like that is possible.
Yeah. I also this is like the fangirl marketer in me that just wants them to be able to have the narrative that they could be using to promote Alpine, which is like, give us some enemies to enemies, kind of like enemies to friends energy. You know what I mean? Like, let them be a little combative in the social media, put them in like competition videos, sidetrack. Like, I would love to see that.
I had a dream, not a dream, but, a vision of them doing when they first became teammates last year, and have them compete at not compete, but have them film like a sketch video, right? Where they're just looking at the camera being like, I don't know why people make such a big deal out of this. We're always so nice and kind to each other. But then you have like one of them in the background just like doing something completely nefarious, like, dumping a pot of glitter in the other one's bag type of a thing. And you just have this comic video of them like playing up way to the top of like, no, we're totally fine. They're clearly not fine, but just caricature level of competition. I think that would have been so funny. It would have been like, you guys are making such a big deal out of childhood beef. Like, who knows? Who cares what their real dynamic is at this point? They're chill coworkers, whatever it is.
Sure.
But give me something on social media. That could have been so incredibly funny.
Well, the thing also that I think is interesting, particularly about Formula One, is that like, because there is such a social media following and such a big social media reaction to everything that happens in Formula One, you do see that reflected in what teams get coverage, both during the race when nothing's really actually racing action happening, and in press and like coverage afterwards. And to be honest, if Alpine would lean into it, they would get some of that same coverage, the same way that Williams is getting the coverage for leaning into this, like, we promise that we are doing our best. Like, even if it's not true, they've presented that narrative. They've given you enough content that the internet is doing exactly what we've done in this episode, which is talk about how we wish them so much well. And, this type of coverage that a team like Stake is not getting. Because they're not doing that same lean in, and Stake does lean in with Valtteri's humor and Joe being as funny and fashionable as he is. Like, they get their focused attention in that way, and Alpine has this like gold mine of playing up the fact that, like, you know what, you guys, I need you to actually, yes, like each other enough to be cordial in a work environment, but let's get some of that energy out in silly little, like, I would watch hours of YouTube videos of the two of them playing like Flip Cup. You know what I mean? Like, and getting devastatingly into it, or doing like short like relay races. These little funny clips that they could adamantly get into, and also let them get that competitive I hate you energy out in that space. And then, move on. Like, trivia, it doesn't have to be active. This is my free marketing advice, I guess, to Alpine. Like, I promise you, the internet will obsess over it. And then that obsession will push up the other type of coverage that you could have.
Their best performing videos of the last little while has been when the admin has posted as admin, being like, when they tell you to fix the car, but my job is just to tweet, and little things like that. And you're like, oh my gosh, admin, love you. I feel for you.
Yep, I agree. Just play into it. Have a little bit of a narrative. That's all I want. I would love to see it. Let Ryan Reynolds host a like Family Feud style video between the two of them.
Just ask Ryan Reynolds to do more.
Yeah,
More.
Just more.
He's a national treasure for us Canadians up here. I
Oh,
speak
that's
for
right.
all of us, by the way. All of us. They all share my opinion. But no, Ryan Reynolds, I think he's hilarious. And he does a great job at promoting Canadian interests in the film industry, which is another reason why I just love him. Like, what a gem. Use him more. More of his humor. He's fun.
Yeah. He's an advertising genius as well. So, I think there's space for it. So outside of the bottom of the field, we also have Oscar, which, like we were saying, I was just like the entire time, what could have been? He was stuck behind Carlos for so much of the race. And, props to Carlos. I'm not saying he should have let him through, but it's something he wouldn't have had to have fought through had he not had that penalty.
At the start of yesterday, not the start of yesterday, but at the point where we realized that no, the McLaren genuinely has pace, the McLaren is performing well throughout qualifying, oh my goodness, it became this like beat of hope of like, wow, we could get a McLaren double podium. That would be brilliant. That would be beautiful. And then you saw the clip of the impeding and you were just like, oh, dang it.
Yep.
Le shoot. And so, you see that that's where Oscar's going to be. And you know that you just kind of feel your hope being ripped away from you because you're like, this could have been a really great day for him. And whereas with Carlos, I didn't become invested over this weekend in his performance at any point. I was like, yeah, you're having a good day. You're having a solid day. But it didn't feel like this buzz electric little magic in a similar way that I was feeling with Oscar, just seeing him put his car in fantastic places, putting together great laps. And then it just went poof. And it was definitely disappointing that his traffic wasn't better managed.
I agree. Yeah, I thought you're right on Carlos. Like, I wasn't ever like, oh, what a bad day, what a horrible thing you're doing. I just sort of was like, yeah, solid, decent drive. So then because of that, I was like, can you please get out of the way?
Yes. It is Oscar's day today. You can perform well next weekend, Carlos. But today we're cheering for Oscar.
Sometimes I do feel like I want to be like, in Dance Moms, where it's like, you get the solo this weekend. I'm like, okay, Carlos, move out of the way. It is in fact Oscar's turn. And that's how competition works. Get out of the way.
Absolutely. Oh, what was it? Bringing it back to Alpine for a brief second. There was a radio message of Pierre being like, Esteban got a good lap in. It was supposed to be my turn to be prioritized this weekend. Oh my gosh. I love Pierre's radio messages. Like, no holds barrel. He already sounds so done with his team. I
am curious to see where he ends up next year. I have to imagine that he's going somewhere else. I just don't know where.
I'm assuming so, yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. You know who I wish he was back with? Yuki.
Please.
I don't care if it doesn't make sense. I don't care where they end up, but I want them back together. I want them on a double podium together because that would just be so adorable, so cute, so sweet. I miss the days when they were together. I'm glad Yuki got a point today. I'm very happy for him. He qualified so well. We got him in a top 3 in practice. I just want the joy to continue, okay? I'm invested.
Well, yeah, so Yuki in particular this weekend, I was just, like, so happy for him. I just wanted him to have the best day, particularly because Yuki is, like, shaping up to be a victim of politics coming up soon, and I think this week is when the interview came out where Honda is moving to Aston Martin, which obviously Aston Martin is pretty locked in with their drivers. And so Honda leaving the V-carb camp means that it is highly likely that Yuki would be the one that's not safe at VCARB. And it is frustrating to me because I get that Danny has been here for longer, but Danny is also being outperformed by Yuki. And at the beginning, it was about like, oh, he doesn't have this chassis that he wants. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. He's just having a bad day. But it's been enough of time since that now that I'm like, actually, no, Yuki is outperforming you. Like, he is the driver that brings more of a performance, but at a certain point, he's not going to be the driver that brings the political gain to being, part of the engine supplier. And so it's frustrating because Honda has basically been like, we would love to have Yuki in Aston Martin, but it would be a matter of there being a seat, which basically means like if Lance decides he doesn't want to be a Formula One driver anymore. And it's so frustrating. I just feel like he has so much potential to keep moving up. And it seems very clear that Red Bull does not have an intention to move him to the main team at any point.
He is hitting his stride in such a beautiful, fantastic way. It has been amazing to see his progress, just the mind switch of him being like, you know what? I am the senior driver on this team now. I
Mhm,
can no longer hide behind my bestie mentor, Pierre, anymore. I have to stand on my own 2 feet and I have to set new goals, new challenges for myself and rise to it. It has been so amazing, so satisfying. I'm glad that their car actually can get some performance pulled out of it now and not
mhm,
just be, well, he's doing the best he can with what he's given. It's like, no, he is getting great performances out and it's phenomenal. I seriously do hope that Honda finds some way to extract more leverage out of Aston Martin
mhm.
and to find a way to get Yuki onto that team because he should be on the grid. He is
Yeah,
putting together fabulous performances. And I know I have to be better about this as well, but it's not just Red Bull or Aston Martin.
yeah,
Yuki has a good enough performance, good enough history within Formula One experience that he should be an option for other teams as well. It should not just be Aston Martin or the Red Bull camp that are looking at him. Other people should be as well. And I
yeah.
seriously hope that is happening
I
because
agree.
he should be on the grid. He is hitting his stride in a fantastic way.
He should be on the grid, and he should be on the grid with a team that can give him a good car. Like right now, VCarb is putting in the performance and bringing it into a situation where I'm like, okay, the car is actually like giving him performance to be able to get into Q1, to have a top 3 performance in a free practice, to hit grab that last point slot and to outperform Danny. But I don't want to see him move to a team like an Alpine just to stay on the grid where he can't actually put in the performance because he really is. And I do think it's so funny too because like I do think Drive to Survive did Yuki a big favor in terms of giving him fanfare because those clips of him early attitude, which obviously was bad for the sport, like in terms of like, oh, you're a professional athlete that should be doing your job. But like the early attitude of him being like, I don't wish to run. I hate the mornings. No, I don't want to train. I hate it here. I want to go home. Everybody was like, that's me. That's
So relatable. You're just like, I get it. I don't understand Max Verstappen being like, all I'm going to do is race. Nothing else matters to me. Can't relate to that. But
right.
Yuki, I get it. No exercise, food, my man, right there.
Not only like no exercise, food, like he's like, I don't understand why I wouldn't be a champion. Okay. This is where I belong. I don't want to run. And that's the part, the specific run, that was the one where I was like, you know what? You will always be famous. Like
My job isn't athlete. My job's just drive.
exactly. This is called drive to survive, not run. Not run
Like,
to anything.
why? Why? Why?
Run to drive? That doesn't have a ring to it now, does it?
Oh my gosh, Yuki, you absolute hero. But also, one of the clips from Drive to Survive of him that just sticks in my mind so clearly is when he was living, I think it was Liam Lawson he was living with, and they're just the most mojo dojo casa house that I've seen in a hot minute. You're kind of just looking at it being like, what?
Does anyone
Okay,
live here?
you live here? What? I thought athletes were supposed to have discipline. Oh,
No, no, no.
no.
I will say I do relate to that. And also, because like it's so funny, like if you're watching the video of this, you can see you're like, oh, like cute background, like lighting kit, so exciting. If you were to see the other side of this laptop, you would be shocked. You would
Man.
be shocked.
I have a studio apartment
Mm,
and there's no good setup for me to just like show people a wall. So
yeah.
it does push me to have a relatively clean apartment, but also if I leave anything out, cat is going to destroy it and or eat it and or cat
This
is
is yeah.
miraculous for forcing good habits on human. It's
This is
great.
I'm actually allergic to cat. So clinically,
No.
I am destined to live a life of bed shelf, you know? So and that's fine. That's fine with me. I feel good about it. And you know what? I also believe Yuki has a bed shelf. Like he has some girly pop tendencies and I love that for
Oh
him.
my
I
gosh,
love the
yes.
pile of clean laundry that you know he moves from bed to desk every day.
He's one of the girls. That's just all there is to it.
It's so true.
It's just real, 100%.
He also
Like,
just like there speaking of clips from Drive to Survive, on the flip side, he really also has a love for fans in a way that I wish to see from every driver. Not that nobody else does this, but that there are some drivers that don't have the same kind of desire to please their fans. And there's like a clip that Drive to Survive caught in the last season where they were in Japan and there were fans like up on a balcony and he was like, "Oh, can I sign your hat for you?" and like asked them to toss it down and then he signed it and tossed it back up. And like there are these little tiny moments that you get of Yuki where you're like he has so much love for his country, he has so much love for his fans. He has lost a little bit of his sarcastic edge and childhood their childlike behavior and now I wish him the best.
yes, he has grown up very nicely. Very happy about it. Oh,
Agreed.
yeah.
Not to go to the exact opposite, but we had George Russell this weekend, who loves to complain in the nicest way possible. I can say this, and
Oh.
also I will say, hilariously enough, all the way from the Senna Memorial Run through the end of this race, I was like, "What's wrong this weekend? What's going on with you?" Because there's a clip of him getting annoyed at Lewis for riding the scooter instead of running. There's a clip of him then getting annoyed that Lewis is hanging out with Charles on his bike instead of running the race. Like Charles was on his bike and so was Valtteri. And there's great clips of, Valtteri, Lewis, and Charles just kind of running together. And then you have George kind of going right past and he tosses out like oh, Ferrari on the side. And it's like audible. I'm like, there are cameras on you. What are you doing? And then we have complaints of why would you put me out on those used tires? And then we get this second pit stop because he's complaining about his tires that probably didn't need to be changed. And it was the wrong choice.
George Russell is not to, psychoanalyze him a little bit, but he seems like such a textbook guy. He
Mm,
wants everything done to the specific letter, the specific rule, and he doesn't really leave space for creativity or improvisation or wiggle room. He wants things done the specific way that they're supposed to be. And in a lot of situations, yeah, that makes sense. When you're arguing with the stewards, you need to know the rules right, left, center, to the letter, to the T. And that's a fantastic skill to have, but it's not something that's applicable in every single shape or form. You do have to be incredibly adaptable in Formula One in order to be successful.
mm,
So it's one of those character traits that I feel like one day he just has to let go of these are the rules. This is how it's supposed to be. This is how it like wanting everything to be incredibly rigid like that.
yeah.
And once he lets go of it, I think we will see a driver that's able to be a lot more competitive and in his true master form. Let it go, dude. You just
Yeah.
got to let go a little bit.
But the decision to allow him to pit was really surprising to me because I guess from time to time I'm like, why is Mercedes not telling George no? And obviously we can't hear the entirety of the radio messages. And I guess this was a quite low stakes way to show him the consequences of not moving forward without listening. Like the low stakes version of it is there was not really space that they were going to lose a place. They still got 6th and 7th. It was just in reverse order. And they did get the extra point for fastest lap, which I don't know made a big difference, but it does put George and Lewis closer in the driver standings. And it only hurts George to have done what they did. And so I wonder if it was sort of this move. When it happened, I was like, they've got to start telling him no. But then I was like, maybe this is them showing him that what you want is not the right move. You have to listen from time to time.
Mercedes, honestly, have so many parallels to Alpine. It's just
Mm,
that they're more in the front of field. They have, a slightly better car, but it feels like they have so many of the same dynamic problems that Alpine are having. Not the driver, like, a little
yeah.
bit of beef there, but they just have drivers that are so incredibly frustrated with where their car is at, with where the performance is at. They have team leadership that is experiencing a big mass exodus. It's definitely a little troubling, but more so is that you have Toto Wolff that just stands in front of the cameras saying, "We're not quite sure what's wrong. We're not quite sure how to fix it. This is not acceptable," but not giving any clear indication that they know how to fix it or how to do better.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part where I understand George's frustration. I understand the constant complaining. If that was the situation I was in, where a team that's supposed to perform well, that has that level of pedigree, is putting out bad performances, but also behind the scenes has no clue how they're going to fix it, I'm
Yeah.
not going to mince my words. I'm going to show that I'm unhappy and displeased. I get it. Like, I commiserate with George almost of like, I understand why you are being this cranky because, quite frankly, it is not a great look. And it's so disappointing because we've seen Mercedes pull out absolute masterclasses.
Yeah.
And yet here they are with no clue how to fix their car that they designed.
I will say I struggle to commiserate with George's behavior, not because I don't understand the frustration,
Yeah.
but because and again, probably a little unfair, but when you're up against Lewis and just the absolute class that he has, and you have, when you look at the flip side of what kind of has happened throughout the season, Lewis's entire seat broke and he completed the race with just a quiet, my seat just broke. And that was it. You didn't hear it like, I hate you guys. Like, this is the worst. Like, this is, how could this be possible? How could you do this to me? And there are times where he gets snippy. I'm not saying he's never been snappy on the radio, but it's sort of like what we were talking about with Max at the beginning, where when Lewis is properly complaining, it's because, like, or being properly snappy, it's because there was a real problem that someone messed something up. And even at the end of these races, he's consistently being like, we'll try again next time. Or there's just a little bit more desire to be helpful with team morale, perhaps, and to be a team leader. And with George, I do hope that at some point he can grow up to the point that he can be a leader of the team, which I do think the driver needs to be able to do if they want to be in that first position. And it'll be interesting to see who they take for that second spot, because to me, I think they need someone who's a little bit more mature in the way that they handle things, and they need someone who can, George has his troubles in terms of just being a less experienced driver. We've seen some pretty devastating crashes that come at inopportune times, like when you're about to podium, or various other issues. And I think, unfortunately, George should be at a position where he could take over that leadership position, and they could bring in a rookie like a Kimi Antonelli. But now if they do bring in a rookie, I think they're going to struggle to have that focus of a mature driver who knows how to talk to a team, who knows how to motivate and to get the rest of the team to want to fix things because they want you to do well. It's hard to want someone to do well when they're just berating on a public channel as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it's especially disappointing from George because we saw a different behavior in him at Williams,
Mm.
and it was a better behavior. It was being that team player. It was, you know what, if you need to sacrifice me, my race, in order for my teammate to do better, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to have seemingly arrived at Mercedes and very much been like, I've arrived, I'm at the top of the field now. The fact that he lost the mindset of, I still need to be critical of myself and see where I can do better and improve myself, and not notice that maybe his attitude could be a little bit better front facing, it's really unfortunate, because what makes world champions is the ability to not just continuously be critical of the car and of all of those other things around him that will continue to a good performance, but also his own attitude, his own actions. It's definitely the biggest, one of the bigger areas he needs to improve on is just
Yeah.
overall the mentality. Let go of the rules a little bit and be kinder to your team.
Yeah. Well, and I think
Uh.
you're dead on this idea of like textbook of like even just the little clip of him being like, you guys are supposed to be running. It's a run. Like those are the little things where it's like, yeah, you're right. He does need to loosen up. Like, yes, we said run, but it's really just like we're all going around in a loop on the track to honor this memory. Just because it's not to the letter of the law doesn't mean we're not accomplishing what we're hoping to accomplish.
Absolutely.
I do hope to see him grow up. I don't mean to kind of pile on a rough weekend for him. I wish to see him. I do. It's another one of those like what could have been. I wish that he had come in with the same attitude that he had in Williams, because what would that Lewis and George stretch of time that they've been teammates have looked like differently if there had been a different kind of attitude, I think, in that dynamic.
A dance coach way back in the day when I was younger used to always say that you should be most worried when someone is no longer willing to give you criticism, because it means that they no longer believe that you can do better, that you can do more, which for anybody unfamiliar with dance, you're continuously chasing perfection, which is something you can never reach. And that's a similar mentality that I have now. If I'm bothering to say, I think that this driver did poorly today, it's because I think that they can do better. And that's where it always comes from. I'm not going to bother criticizing a driver if I think that, yeah, this is as good as they're going to be. Why would I waste my breath saying that they did poorly today? If that's just their performance, that's just their performance. There's not much to discuss.
Yeah.
So just please know, anytime critical words are coming out of my mouth, it's always because you know that there's more in that person and you want to see them performing at their peak. The best seasons that we're going to get is when all of these drivers are on their A game and all have phenomenal cars. And that's when you get magic. And the only way you get magic is if they get all their ducks in a row and all of their skills, all their mentality. It's we're all hoping for the magic for them, for sure.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I feel the same way. It's like there are drivers I don't bother spending time talking about, because like if we were talking about, oh man, I wish that Alpine car would really bring in, we know right now that that's not the case. You know, like you're not wasting your time on that, so to speak. But like when I get frustrated with like Kevin Magnussen and his choices to be unsportsmanlike and the issues that it causes, like it's like, yeah, but imagine what the race could have been if you raced clean.
Exactly.
It's a positive. It's a it's a negative, but it's a positive. That makes sense.
Yes, absolutely makes sense.
Last but not least, we just have the McLaren very close to win with Lando. And I am curious your thoughts in terms of strategy, where you think they lost it. Because to me, it's a combination of like the pit stops, and Lando had one lap where he made some mistakes on lap 58. But I don't know if you felt like there was another space that contributed to like this just there. We were almost there.
Those really were the big two moments where it slipped away so quietly almost. You know, mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the moment he came out behind Checo, it was just like, no, the absolute horror that it occurred. Was very frustrated with that. Definitely what could have been if he had just that clean air that little bit sooner. It could have been really, really nice. But, you know, it's as much as I am disappointed that it came so close and he didn't get that win, it's also just so encouraging to know that he genuinely has the pace to put that car up there and to keep it up there right behind Max.
Yeah.
I that's kind of what I'm holding on to at this point. But yes, I do think it's very much a race that in hindsight, we're going to be able to look back and see not just those two moments, but a number of little ones where tenths were given away. And that's really what this was this time around. It was tenths. And I'm always also going to wonder, like, was there a track limits that was missed? Is there a 5-second penalty that maybe should have been given out here? What? Because we all know, track limits are very hit and miss when it comes to tracking. Wasn't super chaotic this time around, but
well, Max did get a black and white flag for track
exactly.
limits.
He
so
was
it's like
one moment away from it.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe if there was a little bit of replay, you never know. You never know.
Gosh. The way I kept refreshing Twitter in the like 2 hours after the race, because that's, the golden hours, so to speak, for, oh my goodness, a penalty? Le gasp. And it never came, which, I prefer things to be settled on track anyway, but I was still that little bit tense of, I know your game, FIA. Are we doing this weekend or not?
I want it to be a win properly, right? But imagine the shock. I just remember the uproar last year with Austin because that was hours after the race. I was at that race,
Mhm.
went celebrated. I was like, yes, like my boys, they did their thing. How exciting. What an exciting race. I was already at dinner, and the way that I found out that Charles and Lewis had been disqualified was because Williams sent out a email blast that said Logan scores his first points in America, and I was like, I don't think he did. But
Can you
then
count?
I literally and also because like everyone was there for the race, you just saw like a flurry in the restaurant of people being like, what's going on? So, you never know. We could get off this podcast recording and be like, oh, what a twist.
Excuse me. I was still on the bus heading back from the track when the
Were
news
you?
hit. Oh yeah. And I don't think anyone else was really paying attention to their emails, but I like woke up my friend because she was asleep and I was like, read this now. I was like, what a way to wake up is to just be like, guess what? Disqualifications. Because at that point, we also hadn't got the news of like, oh, official disqualification. It was just their planks had failed inspection,
Mm,
which if you know the technical rules of it, you're just like, oh yeah, they're DQ'd.
yeah.
There's no arguing with this. They just are.
Yeah.
But no official announcement had been made yet. So no like social media blast had gone out yet. It was just if you follow the bots, like the FIA Doco bots,
Oh,
then you're like, I know.
that's wild. You
Yeah.
were breaking news. You were ready.
Oh yes. As one is using up the last little bit of international data that I had over that weekend to read that document before having to turn off my phone. Yeah.
Like, this is all I have left. I'm ready. I can't tell anyone, but I do know.
Mhm.
That's what a rock and a hard place, as they say. Oh
Exactly.
man. Well, the only other thing was I just enjoyed the team radio.
Oh, always.
This one, everybody was in rare form. Literally, Max being like, "It's just information, Max. Mine too." It's like, this is the most polite I've ever watched two people tell each other to go screw themselves. Like,
If I was a driver, the way I would request a like button on the radio that's like not an F off button, but
yeah,
just
yeah.
say if I push this, please stop.
Literally, like a shush button. I'm open to like, like what just
Yeah.
shows up on the screen is that emoji that's like the finger.
Yeah. It's like,
Just
let me
rains those.
drive.
Like an automated message too, so they don't have to waste their breath. Just
No, request the specific Kimmy, not Kimmy Antonelli, the other Kimmy, Raikkonen.
oh.
Just like, I know what I'm doing.
I do. I do know what I'm doing. Or like Carlos, yes, that's the point. Like there are so many little
It's
sassy
intentional.
ones. It's intentional. Oh. I it's kind of like when you call an Uber and you can ask for like a quiet ride. Like they should be able to put on do not disturb, I feel.
My playlist request, please.
Yeah, please. Actually, sometimes I do think about that, and it's only when I'm ever playing F123. I'm like, man, what a bummer. They can't even listen to music, Like, I'd like to have some tunes on at that
Honestly, the
point.
fact that I now have like the gaming PC and just the laptop and the tablet, I have so many screens and so many options that I'm just like, I've solved this in the obviously most convenient way possible. Just have a multitude of devices. Clearly the easiest way to do things, not just messing with the game settings. Nope.
No, of course not.
Just
Of
two
course not.
computers.
Well, usually we wrap up with next race and season predictions. Do you have any predictions for Monaco?
Oh, geez. Well, I'm just gonna say my hopes and prayers are for Leclerc. Like, please just let him have a good weekend. Podium, a win,
Anything.
not crashing, being able to participate in the race. Like, please just let him have a day that he can smile. Yes, that's all I've got in me right now. That's all that's consuming my mind.
That's fair. I would love to see now that we're at this point where I'm like, people can beat Max. Now I start to be like, who would I like to see win? Normally I'm like, who would I like to see on the podium? But now I'm really genuinely like, who do I feel deserves to win at Monaco?
Mhm.
And I would love to see Charles up there. I don't know that it's gonna happen, but I would like to see it.
As long as they don't give me that, I did not like their custom livery
Oh,
and thing
yeah.
last year.
Mhm.
I did not love it. But if they want to give us something custom again and a little prettier, I would not say no to that.
Other predictions, I do feel like we're going to continue to see performance from McLaren, and I think they are most likely to be the ones that can fight with Red Bull, which I didn't even really feel was like a possibility at the beginning of this season. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Um, and lastly, off-track prediction, I think we are going to see a resolution to the Adrian Newey situation within like a week or two,
Agreed.
and I'm
It,
excited.
yes. I My big thing is that Adrian Newey is so difficult to predict what he's going to do
Mm,
because he doesn't, I don't think, particularly he doesn't care about the money.
yeah.
He doesn't care about which particular car he works on. He can build something out of anything. You know, he was able to build this with spare parts in a cave type of a vibe. So it's really a question of what does he care about?
Yeah.
Does he care about the team dynamic and who he's working with? Okay, who does he have personal relationships with up and down this grid? There's a couple of teams that he could go back to that he's worked with their leadership before.
Mhm.
And then there's also the question of what fun side projects can this team fund and or give him access to, which we know he likes fun side projects.
Yeah.
He likes to be able to design something cool without the same constraints as Formula 1.
Yeah.
So, it's one of the reasons why I kind of do think that Williams is out of the running because they don't fund any cool little side projects. It's really just Formula 1. So I do think that the other teams with a broader interests are going to be more at play, like Ferrari and McLaren. I think those are the big two that he's considering.
I'm leaning Ferrari, and I'm leaning that way because Fred is building just like the Avengers of Formula 1,
Ooh,
and
yes.
I'm so excited about it. You know what I mean? Like, I am like watching Fred film this, it genuinely actually does feel like the forming of the Avengers, where it's like the first 5 movies, or the first like phase of it, you knew who each of these guys were, and Scarlet, but he knew who everybody on the team was so specifically. They had these like very specific accomplishments. You felt very attached to them. And then someone was like, we can put them all in the same movie. And you were like, I didn't know that was allowed. I
That's an
didn't know that was
option?
allowed.
Ooh.
I didn't know he knew how to do that. It's I wish to see it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what does it look like when you have the star of every portion of the team, like every dynamic? You have like these massive stars coming over from Mercedes that officially are not following Lewis because of a non-compete, but definitely are following Lewis. Lewis obviously is coming over. You have like the heritage in Charles. You have Fred, who seems to be able to get people to do what he wants them to do. You have these like changes, and you have the right person at the helm for once. And it's like, what do you do when you also put Adrian Newey in that mix?
You can feel the magic starting to happen.
Yeah.
It is Maranello is starting to they're cooking. Like something's happening over there. I would be very, very happy if Newey ended up there. Also, him just saying that it's a career dream of his to
Mhm.
work with Lewis is that's a huge thing as well. Like that's
Yeah.
what this man is after at this point. He's after just those big career, like he's after his bucket list, okay?
Yeah.
That's what he's after. That's what he cares the most about, which I respect. Like if you get to that point in your career that that's the only thing you need to worry about, phenomenal.
Agreed. The thing about that too is like that's how they got Lewis. It's what's left that I haven't done. Like, Lewis wants one more championship, and he wanted to do work with Ferrari, and there's really like nothing else left. It's the same way like Max lately has been talking about, like, I did all the things that I want to do, so like you know, every day's just sort of doing the same thing. Like with Lewis, you have the same angle, that's how they were able to get him, and Lewis was focused on like, what legacy am I leaving behind? How am I changing the sport for the better? And what can I do when I leave? And he's hitting those check boxes, and that's how Fred got him. So it's like you have the same thing where like Charles is so dedicated to this team, and we know why with his history with the team, and he's not going anywhere, you know? And to bring to be able to bring over Adrian, who also is at this point where it's like it's just the last thing I haven't done. What a satisfied team that's not in that space where they are making decisions out of desperation, but they're making decisions out of like genuine satisfaction with their career. It's such a rare thing to be able to do that.
I love it. I'm so excited to see what Fred cooks. Like he's one of those people that he has all of these personal connections, and then to see him pull at all of them and
Mhm.
absolutely mastermind a brilliant team, it's so it's so satisfying. And we know that it's also been a process. Like this is his second year with the team. And last year, everyone was so cranky, being like, oh, they have a new team principal. He hasn't done anything yet. Why isn't he doing anything? And it's like, change takes time. Duh. And now we're seeing it come to fruition. It's incredibly exciting to see. And then we had the shock revelation last, 2 weeks ago now already at this point, of Leclerc getting a new race engineer.
Mhm.
Where's the tell-all on that? Like, personnel changes are happening, and it's I'm getting very excited about Ferrari. I'm not excited quite yet because I don't think they've reached their full final form. I think there's still a little bit of a process to go through and to get to, but fingers crossed that Adrian Newey is actually going to Ferrari, because I'm definitely getting myself hyped up over this still currently theoretical dream.
Yeah.
Newey, don't crush my heart, please.
If you're listening, there are 2 girls who really desperately need you to make the right decision.
Also, if you say hi to me ever, I will gift you a notebook that says "Totally Not World Domination Secrets"
I love
and
that.
or other funny covers, because I know you like notebooks. So
I'm available. But yeah, I do hope it does end up storybook, and I think you're right. Like I think Ferrari's final form, so to speak, will be 2026. And so like I think a lot of people, especially with all these moves, are expecting Ferrari to come out of the gate like beasts next year. And I do really think we've got one more year to the new regulations and new car and everything settling in. But I am excited to see it. So we'll see. Well, this has been so much fun, Christina. Thank you for hanging out for an extraordinary amount of time, roughly about the amount of time of the race itself.
Well, thank you for having me. This is oops, I touched that. It has been an absolute delight. Very, very fun to be here.
This has been great. If the people listening would like to find you on the internet, where can they do so?
They can find me Christina.fastcars on TikTok and Christina Lee Mace on my other socials.
Amazing. Well, be sure to drop Christina a follow, and I will see you next episode. Always, if you don't want to watch these races alone, you can join the actual grid chat. I host a group chat of motorsports fans where fan behavior is encouraged, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. We watch these races live together, chat about breaking news, and of course, send each other an unhealthy amount of memes. If you'd like to join the grid chat, you can do so at tandemproductions.com/grid chat. There will also be a link to that in the episode description. Once you fill out the form on the webpage there, you'll get an invite via email from me. If you want to connect, let me know what you thought about the episode, or even just ask me another question that you'd like me to cover on the show. You can find me on all social media platforms at Marissa Kamari. And one of the best ways to connect with me is if you're listening to this podcast on Herd FM. You can find me in the community section on Herd FM, where my username is just my first name, Marissa. And once we follow each other, after every episode that you listen to, I'll be able to comment and have a conversation with you directly. So again, my username on Herd FM is Marissa. As always, I've been your host, Marissa Tandon, and thank you for joining the Grid Chat.